The dusty streets of Casa Grande, Arizona Territory, were never kind to secrets, but Olivia Norton had kept hers locked away for 24 years, buried beneath layers of propriety and shame that had calcified around her heart like desert stone. She stood in the back room of the tiny church, her hands trembling as she adjusted the simple ivory dress that her younger sister had worn just 3 years before. The fabric smelled of cedar and mothballs, and the waist had needed taking in twice because Olivia had grown thinner over the past month, her appetite stolen by nerves and the weight of what she was about to do. Through the thin wooden wall, she could hear the murmur of voices, the shuffle of boots on the worn floorboards, the clearing of throats. There were not many guests. Her father had seen to that, sending out invitations only to those who needed to witness this transaction masquerading as a wedding. "You look beautiful," her sister Margaret whispered, though her eyes told a different story. They both knew this was not the wedding either of them had dreamed about as girls, back when their mother was still alive and the world seemed full of possibilities instead of obligations. Olivia managed a weak smile. "Thank you for lying. I am not lying. You do look beautiful. You have always been beautiful, Liv. You have just never believed it." Before Olivia could respond, her father knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Samuel Norton was a hard man, made harder by the Arizona sun, and the struggle to maintain respectability in a territory that cared little for such Eastern sensibilities. He had brought his family west 5 years ago with dreams of making a fortune in cattle, but the land had other plans, and now he clung to his position as the town banker with the same desperation he brought to managing his daughter's futures. "It is time," he said, not meeting her eyes. He had barely looked at her since she had confessed the truth 3 weeks ago, the words tumbling out like water from a broken dam. She was not sure what she had expected. Comfort, perhaps. Understanding. Instead, she had received cold efficiency and a hastily arranged marriage to a man she had never met. "Father, whatever you are about to say, save it. Jonathan Burke is a good man. He owns land. He has agreed to take you despite your condition. You should be grateful." The word hung in the air between them like a curse. Condition. As if what she carried was a disease rather than a consequence, as if the shame was hers alone to bear. Margaret squeezed her hand. "I will be right there. You will not be alone." But Olivia had never felt more alone in her life. As she followed her father down the narrow hallway toward the small chapel, her mind raced with everything that had led to this moment. The dance last summer. The young soldier with the easy smile and easier promises. The moonlight walk that had ended with her dress rumpled and her innocence gone, given freely because she had believed him when he said he loved her. The weeks of waiting for him to return to town, not knowing he had been transferred to a fort in New Mexico. The morning sickness that had started in October. The growing terror as she realized what was happening to her body. The chapel was small, barely large enough to hold 24 people, though only 10 sat in the rough-hewn pews. The late afternoon light filtered through the single stained glass window, casting colored shadows across the floor. At the altar stood a man she recognized only from a distance. Jonathan Burke. He was older than she had expected, perhaps 40 or more, with gray threading through his dark hair and deep lines around his eyes. He stood stiffly in a black suit that looked uncomfortable on his lean frame, his hat held in calloused hands. But it was the man standing beside him who made Olivia's feet stutter to a stop. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against a crisp white shirt. His hair was the color of sun-bleached wheat, curling slightly at his collar. He wore dark trousers and boots that looked well used but cared for. But it was his face that struck her. Strong jaw, straight nose, and eyes the color of a summer sky that met hers across the small space with an intensity that made her breath catch. There was something in his expression she could not quite name. Curiosity, perhaps, or concern. Her father's grip on her arm tightened, propelling her forward. As they approached the altar, Jonathan Burke stepped forward. This close, Olivia could see the exhaustion in his face, the sallow tint to his skin. He smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Miss Norton," he said, his voice rough. "You look lovely." "Thank you," she managed. The Reverend, a thin man named Patterson who had arrived in Casa Grande only 6 months before, opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." Jonathan Burke began to cough. It started as a small thing, a clearing of the throat, but it quickly escalated into a deep, rattling sound that shook his whole body. He turned away, pressing a handkerchief to his mouth. When he lowered it, Olivia saw spots of red on the white fabric. Her father saw it too. "Jonathan." "I am fine," Burke gasped. "Just a moment." "I am," he collapsed. The tall blond man moved with surprising speed, catching Burke before he hit the floor. He lowered him gently, calling out orders with the confidence of someone used to being obeyed. "Someone get the doctor. Now." The small congregation erupted into chaos. Margaret rushed forward to Olivia's side while Samuel Norton stood frozen, his face pale with shock and what looked like fury. The blond man pressed his fingers to Burke's neck, then looked up at the Reverend. "He is breathing, but barely." "Where is the doctor?" "I will get him," someone shouted, and boots thundered toward the door. Olivia found herself kneeling beside the fallen man without consciously deciding to move. Up close, she could see that Jonathan Burke was desperately ill. His skin was almost translucent, sheened with sweat despite the coolness of the church. His breathing was shallow and labored. "How long has he been sick?" the blond man asked, and it took Olivia a moment to realize he was speaking to her. "I do not know. I have never met him before today." Their eyes met and something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition of the absurdity of the situation. "Your name?" he asked. "Olivia Norton." "Olivia." He said it slowly, as if testing the weight of it. "I am Thomas Lawson. I am Jonathan's foreman." Was supposed to be his best man. Thomas glanced down at the unconscious man between them. "I tried to tell him this was a bad idea. He has been sick for months. Consumption, the doctor thinks. But he was determined to marry today. Said he needed to do right by you. Do right by me." Olivia felt a hysterical laugh building in her throat. "He does not even know me." "No, but your father made it clear what your circumstances were." Jonathan felt it was the honorable thing. The words hit her like a slap. Her father had told this dying stranger about her shame. Had arranged for her to be handed off like unwanted goods. The humiliation of it burned through her, mixing with fear and anger and a grief she had been holding at bay for weeks. The doctor arrived, a portly man named Henderson who smelled of whiskey and tobacco. He examined Jonathan quickly, then shook his head. "He needs to be in bed. This man is in no condition to be married or doing anything else. He should have been resting weeks ago." "He was insistent," Thomas said quietly. "Well, his insistence might kill him. Help me get him to my office." Carefully now. Thomas and 2 other men lifted Jonathan and carried him out. The small congregation began to disperse, whispering among themselves. Olivia heard the words clearly. Cursed. Shameful. What will she do now? Her father stood like a statue, his face carved from granite. When everyone else had gone, he finally spoke. "This is a disaster. Father, do not speak. I need to think." Margaret moved closer to Olivia. "What will happen now?" Samuel Norton turned his cold gaze on his eldest daughter. Now we are ruined. The one man willing to take her is dying." No one else will have her, not in this territory, not anywhere respectable. That is not fair, Margaret protested. Olivia made a mistake, but a mistake, their father's voice rose. A mistake is adding a column of figures incorrectly. What your sister did was ruin herself, and by extension this family. I had one solution, and now even that is being taken from me. Olivia felt something harden inside her chest. She had spent weeks drowning in shame, accepting her father's cold disappointment as her due. But standing in this empty church, wearing a borrowed dress for a wedding to a dying stranger, something shifted. Maybe it was the way Thomas Lawson had looked at her, not with judgment or pity, but with simple human concern. Maybe it was the realization that her situation could not get much worse. Whatever the cause, she felt her spine straighten. Then I will find my own solution, she said. Her father laughed, a harsh bark of sound. And what solution is that? You are months away from bearing a bastard child. You have no money, no prospects, and now, thanks to this fiasco, everyone in town knows your shame. What exactly do you propose to do? I do not know yet. But I will not stay where I am not wanted. She turned and walked out of the church before her father could respond, leaving Margaret calling after her and Samuel Norton sputtering with rage. The late afternoon sun hit her face like a blessing after the dim interior of the church. The street was mostly empty, just a few men outside the saloon and a woman sweeping the porch of the general store. Across the way, she could see the doctor's office, the door still open from where they had carried Jonathan Burke inside. Without fully thinking it through, Olivia found her feet carrying her toward it. The interior was dim and smelled of carbolic and sickness. Dr. Henderson was washing his hands in a basin, while Thomas Lawson stood by a narrow bed where Jonathan lay, looking even worse than he had in the church. "Miss Norton," the doctor said, not unkindly, "you should not be here. This is not a sight for a young lady." "Is he dying?" the doctor sighed. "Yes, could be days, could be weeks, but the consumption has him in its grip and there is nothing I can do to change that. Did he know?" "When he agreed to marry me, did he know he was dying?" Thomas answered from beside the bed. "Yes, he knew. Why would he do such a thing? Because Jonathan was a good man." Thomas's voice was rough with emotion. "One of the best I have ever known. When your father approached him, told him about your situation, Jonathan saw a way to do one last good thing before he died. Give you and your child his name, his land, a future." Olivia moved closer to the bed. Jonathan's eyes were closed, his breathing labored. Even unconscious, his face was creased with pain. He was willing to tie himself to a stranger out of charity, not charity, decency. He told me once that he had wasted too much of his life being alone, that if he could help someone else avoid that fate, it would give his death meaning. The words pierced something in Olivia's heart. She had been so caught up in her own fear and shame that she had not considered Jonathan as a real person with his own story, his own reasons. She had thought of him only as a solution to her problem, just as her father had. But he had been willing to spend his last days yoked to a stranger to give her child legitimacy. "I am sorry," she whispered. "He cannot hear you," the doctor said gently. "I know, but I needed to say it anyway." She stood there for a long moment, looking at the dying man who had been willing to sacrifice for her. Then she turned to Thomas. "You said he has land." "Yes, a ranch about 5 miles north of town. Good water, decent grazing. He built it up over 10 years. What will happen to it when he dies?" Thomas shrugged. "He has no family, no will that I know of. I suppose it will go to the territory." An idea was forming in Olivia's mind. A wild, probably foolish idea, but it was better than anything else she could think of. "What if we married anyway?" Both men stared at her. "What?" The doctor said. Jonathan wanted to marry me to give me and my child his name and his land. His dying does not change my need for those things. If we married now, today, would it not accomplish the same purpose? Miss Norton, Dr. Henderson said carefully, the man is unconscious. He cannot consent to marriage in this state. But he already consented. He came to the church. He stood at the altar. His intention was clear. Thomas was looking at her with those sky-blue eyes, and she could not read his expression. Why would you want to marry a dying man? Because I do not have any better options. Because he was willing to help me, and I owe him the respect of accepting that help. And because maybe, just maybe, if I am married when my child is born, that child will have a chance at a decent life. The room fell silent except for Jonathan's labored breathing. Finally, Thomas spoke. It would not be legal, not without his consent. What if we got his consent now? Could you wake him? Even for a moment, Dr. Henderson shook his head. Even if I could, and I am not sure I can, it would be cruel. The man needs rest, not to be roused to participate in a deathbed wedding. More cruel than letting his sacrifice be for nothing, the question hung in the air. Olivia could see the doctor wavering. Finally, he sighed. I will try. But I make no promises, and if he shows any distress, we stop immediately. Understood. Olivia nodded. The doctor prepared a syringe with something from a small bottle, then injected it into Jonathan's arm. They waited. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only a few minutes, Jonathan's eyes flickered open. They were glassy with pain and fever, but they found Olivia's face. Miss Norton, he rasped, did we marry? No, you collapsed, but I am here and I am willing if you still are. A weak smile touched his lips. Still, trying to do the decent thing. As am I. Will you marry me, Jonathan Burke? Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Yes, give me your hand. Olivia took his hand. It was hot with fever and thin as bird bones, but his grip was surprisingly firm. Thomas left quickly and returned with Reverend Patterson, who looked uncomfortable but agreed to perform a brief ceremony. Dearly beloved, he began, speaking quickly, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Olivia barely heard the words. She kept her eyes on Jonathan, watching as he struggled to stay conscious. When it came time for vows, his were whispered so quietly she had to lean in to hear them. Hers were clearer, spoken with a firmness she did not entirely feel. I now pronounce you man and wife, Reverend Patterson said. May God have mercy on us all. Jonathan's eyes closed again, but the faint smile remained on his lips. His hand went slack in Olivia's. He is still breathing, the doctor said, but he has slipped back into unconsciousness. You should go. There is nothing more you can do here. Olivia looked at the thin gold band that Thomas had produced from Jonathan's pocket, now on her left hand. She was married. To a dying man. It should have felt surreal, but instead, it felt strangely right, as if she had finally done something correct after weeks of everything being wrong. I will come back tomorrow, she said. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and purple. Thomas followed her out onto the wooden sidewalk. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the light fade. That was either very brave or very foolish, he finally said. Probably both. Your father is going to be livid. My father has been livid since I told him I was with child. This will just give him a new reason. Thomas turned to look at her, really look at her, and Olivia found herself unable to look away. In the fading light, his eyes seemed even bluer, and there was something in his expression that made her heart beat faster despite the absurdity of the situation. What will you do now? He asked. I suppose I should go back to my father's house, tell him I am married. And after that? I do not know. I have not thought that far ahead. Jonathan's ranch is empty. Has been since he moved into town last month when he got too sick to manage it alone. As his wife, it belongs to you now. The reality of what she had just done was beginning to sink in. She was married. She had a home, or would have once Jonathan died. The thought made her feel sick with guilt. "I know what you are thinking," Thomas said quietly, "but do not." Jonathan knew what he was doing. He wanted this, wanted to help. You speak of him as if he is already gone. I have watched consumption take 3 men. I know how this ends. His voice was rough with grief. Jonathan has been more than an employer to me. He has been a friend. One of the only ones I have had out here. Watching him fade has been hard. Without thinking, Olivia reached out and touched his arm. "I am sorry, truly." He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back up at her face. Something passed between them again, that same spark of connection she had felt in the church. She pulled her hand back quickly, suddenly aware of how inappropriate the gesture was. She was married now, even if only technically, and this man was her husband's friend and employee. "I should go," she said. "I will walk you. It is getting dark." "That is not necessary." "Maybe not, but I am going to do it anyway. Jonathan would want me to look after you." They walked in silence through the streets of Casa Grande. The town was settling in for the evening, lights appearing in windows, the sounds of supper being prepared drifting out into the cooling air. When they reached her father's house, a modest 2-story structure on the edge of town, Thomas stopped at the gate. "Will you be all right?" he asked. "I survived learning I was with child and my father's disappointment. I think I can survive telling him I married a dying man against his plans." Thomas almost smiled. "You are stronger than you look, Olivia Norton." "Burke," she corrected softly. "Olivia Burke now." The use of her new name seemed to affect him. His expression shifted, something she could not quite read flashing through his eyes. "Yes, Mrs. Burke. Good evening." She watched him walk away, his long strides carrying him quickly into the gathering darkness. Then she squared her shoulders and went inside to face her father. The confrontation was every bit as bad as she had expected. Samuel Norton raged and threatened and pronounced her an ungrateful, foolish girl who had destroyed what little chance she had at redemption. Her sister cried. The housekeeper, an older Mexican woman named Rosa who had been with the family since they arrived in Arizona, stood in the corner looking concerned. Through it all, Olivia remained calm, surprising herself with her own composure. "It is done, father," she said when he finally ran out of steam. "I am married, legally married. Whatever happens now, my child will have a name. The name of a dying man. How long do you think that will protect you? A week, a month, and then what? You will be a widow with a child and no means of support. I will have the ranch, Jonathan's land." "A ranch you have no idea how to run. Do you even know how to milk a cow, Olivia? How to mend a fence? You were raised to be a banker's daughter, not a rancher's wife." He was right, of course. She knew nothing about running a ranch. But she also knew she could not stay here in this house, with his disappointment and rage poisoning the air around her. "Then I will learn," she said. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Olivia stared at the ceiling and wondered what she had done. Her hand rested on her stomach, where the small swell of her pregnancy was just beginning to show. In 4 or 5 months, she would have a child. Jonathan's child, at least in name. The thought should have comforted her, but instead, she found herself thinking about Thomas Lawson. The way he had looked at her, the gentle concern in his voice, the strength in the hands that had caught Jonathan when he fell, she pushed the thoughts away. Thomas was Jonathan's friend, her husband's employee. It was wrong to think of him as anything else, especially now when Jonathan lay dying. But as she drifted off to sleep, it was Thomas's blue eyes she saw, not her dying husband's face. The next morning, Olivia woke early and dressed in her simplest gown. She braided her dark hair and pinned it up, then slipped out of the house before her father was awake. The walk to the doctor's office took only 10 minutes, and when she arrived, she found Thomas already there, sitting beside Jonathan's bed. "How is he?" she asked softly. Thomas looked up, and she could see the exhaustion in his face. "About the same. He woke once in the night, asked for water. I gave it to him, and he went back to sleep. Have you been here all night?" "Most of it. Could not leave him alone." Olivia pulled up a second chair and sat down. In the morning light filtering through the window, Jonathan looked even worse than he had the day before. His breathing was shallow and rattled, and his skin had taken on a grayish tinge. "You should rest," she said to Thomas. "I can sit with him for a while." "You do not have to do that. He is my husband. Where else would I be?" Thomas studied her for a long moment. "You are not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Someone more fragile, I suppose. When your father came to Jonathan, he made it sound like you were some delicate flower who had been taken advantage of and could not cope with the consequences." Olivia felt her cheeks heat. "Is that what he said?" "More or less. But you are not like that, are you? You are scared, yes, but you are also strong. You make decisions and stand by them." "I do not feel very strong." "Strength is not about feeling confident. It is about doing what needs to be done even when you are terrified." They sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to Jonathan's labored breathing. Olivia found herself studying Thomas when she thought he was not looking. He had removed his jacket and rolled up his shirt sleeves, revealing strong forearms tanned dark from the sun. His hands were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who worked hard for his living. There was something solid about him, something dependable. "How long have you worked for Jonathan?" she asked. 5 years. I came to Casa Grande with nothing but a horse and a saddle. Jonathan gave me work when no one else would, taught me everything I know about ranching. He is the reason I am not still drifting from town to town." "Why would no one else hire you?" Thomas hesitated, then shrugged. "I had a reputation. Got into some trouble up north, nothing terrible but enough that people talk." Jonathan did not care about rumors. He cared about whether a man was willing to work hard and deal honest. "I have tried to prove he was right to take a chance on me." "I am sure you have." "I hope so. Everything I have I owe to him." The words were simple, but the emotion behind them was clear. Thomas loved Jonathan, not romantically, but with the deep bond of true friendship. Olivia felt a pang of jealousy. She had never had that kind of connection with anyone, not even with Margaret, who she loved, but who had always felt more like a responsibility than a companion. Dr. Henderson arrived mid-morning to check on his patient. His examination was brief, and his expression grave. "It will not be long now," he said quietly. "His lungs are filling up, a day or two at most." The words hung in the air like a death sentence, which Olivia supposed they were. She looked at Jonathan, this stranger she had married, and felt a confusing mix of emotions. Grief for a life ending too soon. Guilt that she was benefiting from his death. And beneath it all, a growing awareness of Thomas, sitting just a few feet away, his presence both comforting and unsettling. Over the next 2 days, Olivia and Thomas took turns sitting with Jonathan. Sometimes they talked quietly about inconsequential things. The weather, the state of the ranch, the small dramas of Casa Grande. Other times they sat in silence, a silence that felt increasingly comfortable. Olivia found herself looking forward to the moments when it was Thomas's turn to watch, when she could sit beside him and feel less alone. She also began to notice small things about him. The way he was gentle when tending to Jonathan, adjusting blankets and moistening dry lips. The way he sometimes hummed under his breath when he thought no one was listening, sad songs in a minor key. The way his eyes would find hers across the room, and the small smile he would give her, as if they shared a secret. It was wrong to feel this way. She knew it was wrong. Her husband was dying, and she was developing feelings for another man, but she could not seem to help it. Thomas was kind and strong and steady, everything she had thought the soldier who fathered her child had been but was not. And more than that, he treated her like a person, not a problem to be solved or a shame to be hidden. On the evening of the second day, Jonathan woke. His eyes were clearer than they had been since the wedding, and when he saw Olivia and Thomas sitting beside his bed, he smiled. "My wife," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "My friend." "We are here," Olivia said, taking his hand. "Good, need to tell you both something." "Rest, Jonathan," Thomas said. "Save your strength." "No strength left to save, listen." He coughed, a terrible rattling sound, then continued. "Olivia, I know we barely know each other, but I am glad I could help. You deserve better than shame." "Thank you," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for your kindness. Thomas, the ranch. Make sure she knows how to run it. Teach her, help her." "I will, I promise." "Good, and Thomas, do not be alone. Life is too short to waste being alone." Thomas's jaw clenched, and Olivia could see tears in his eyes. "I will not forget." Jonathan's eyes closed. "Tired now. So tired." "Then rest," Olivia said softly. "We will be here." He squeezed her hand once more, then his grip relaxed. His breathing, which had been labored for days, seemed to ease slightly. He looked almost peaceful. An hour later he was gone. Dr. Henderson confirmed what they already knew, then left them alone with the body. Olivia sat holding Jonathan's cooling hand, feeling numb. She had known this man for less than 3 days, and yet his death hit her harder than she had expected. He had been kind. He had been good. And he had died to give her and her child a chance. "I will make the arrangements," Thomas said finally, his voice rough. "The funeral, the burial, you should not have to deal with that. Thank you, Olivia." He waited until she looked at him. He died knowing he had done something good. That mattered to him, more than you know. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The funeral was held 2 days later. More people attended than Olivia had expected, townspeople who came to pay their respects to a man they had known and respected. Her father came, standing stiffly in the back, his expression unreadable. Margaret sat beside Olivia, holding her hand throughout the service. Thomas spoke, giving a eulogy that was simple and heartfelt. He talked about Jonathan's generosity, his quiet strength, his fundamental decency. He did not mention the unusual circumstances of the marriage, and Olivia was grateful for that small mercy. After the burial in the small cemetery on the edge of town, people came up to offer their condolences. Most were kind, though Olivia could see the speculation in their eyes. She was a new widow, young and pregnant with a child that everyone knew could not be her dead husband's. It would be the subject of gossip for months. When everyone else had gone, Thomas approached her. He had changed into a black suit for the funeral, and the formal clothes made him look older, more serious. "I will take you out to the ranch tomorrow if you like," he said. "Show you around, help you understand what you have inherited. I would appreciate that. I should warn you, it is not fancy." Jonathan was a practical man. "Everything is functional, not decorative." "That is fine. I am not looking for fancy." They stood awkwardly for a moment, then Thomas tipped his hat. "Until tomorrow, then." Olivia watched him walk away, then turned to find Margaret beside her. "He seems nice," her sister said carefully. "He was Jonathan's friend. I can see that. I can also see the way you look at him." "Margaret, I am not judging you, Liv. I am just worried. You are vulnerable right now, and I do not want to see you hurt again. I am not looking at him in any particular way. He has been kind, that is all." Margaret gave her a knowing look but did not push. They walked back toward town together, and Olivia tried not to think about how her heart had lifted when Thomas mentioned tomorrow. That night, unable to sleep, Olivia stood at her bedroom window and looked out at the dark streets of Casa Grande. Somewhere out there was the ranch that now belonged to her. The life she would have to build. The future that seemed both terrifying and full of possibility. Her hand rested on her stomach, where the baby was now making its presence known with small flutters of movement. In a few months, she would be a mother. She needed to be strong for this child, needed to create a life worth living, and whether she was ready or not, that life began tomorrow. Thomas arrived at her father's house just after breakfast, driving a wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Olivia was waiting on the porch, her few belongings packed into a trunk that Rosa had helped her carry down. Her father had not come out to say goodbye, and she tried not to let that hurt. Margaret hugged her fiercely. "Write to me. Promise you will write." "I promise. It is only 5 miles. I will visit." "I know, but still. Everything is changing so fast. It will be all right. I will make sure it is all right." Thomas loaded her trunk into the wagon, then helped her up onto the seat. His hands were strong and steady on her waist, and Olivia tried to ignore the flutter of awareness that went through her at his touch. The ride out of town was quiet. The morning was cool, the sun just beginning to warm the desert landscape. As they left Casa Grande behind, Olivia felt something loosen in her chest. She had lived in that town for 5 years, but it had never felt like home. Maybe the ranch would be different. "Tell me about the ranch," she said as they rode. "It is about 200 acres, most of it decent grazing land. There is a small creek that runs year-round, which is worth more than gold out here. Jonathan ran about 50 head of cattle, plus some chickens and a few pigs. The house is small but solid. Jonathan built it himself when he first claimed the land. And you live there too, in the bunkhouse. It is not much, just 1 room, but it suits me." "What will you do now that Jonathan is gone?" Thomas was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about that. The ranch needs someone to run it, and you will need help, at least until you learn the ropes. If you are willing, I would like to stay on. Keep doing what I have been doing. I know Jonathan would have wanted the land cared for properly." "What about wages?" "I have no idea what Jonathan paid you, or even if there is money to pay you." "There is money. Not a fortune, but enough. Jonathan was careful, and we do not need to worry about wages right now. Let us just focus on keeping the ranch running." They crested a small rise, and the ranch came into view. It was indeed small, but there was something appealing about it. The house was a simple adobe structure with a covered porch, sitting in a grove of cottonwood trees near the creek. Beyond it were a barn, a corral with several horses, and what must be the bunkhouse Thomas had mentioned. The land stretched out in all directions, rolling hills covered in scrub and grass, with mountains visible in the distance. "It is beautiful," Olivia said, and meant it. "It is home," Thomas replied. "Or it has been for me. I hope it can be for you too." He helped her down from the wagon and led her to the house. The interior was dim and cool, with thick adobe walls that kept out the heat. There was a main room with a fireplace, a small kitchen area, and 2 bedrooms. The furniture was simple but well made, and everything was surprisingly clean. "I have been coming out to keep the place up," Thomas explained. "Did not want it to fall into disrepair." "Thank you, that was thoughtful." He showed her around, pointing out where things were stored, how to work the pump for the well water, where Jonathan had kept his important papers. There was a surprising amount to learn, and Olivia's head was spinning by the time they finished. "I know it is overwhelming," Thomas said. "But you do not have to learn everything at once. We will take it slow." Over the next few weeks, Olivia settled into ranch life. Thomas was patient, teaching her the basics of caring for the animals, maintaining the property, and managing the small household. She learned to milk the cow, gather eggs, and cook simple meals on the wood stove. Her hands, which had always been soft and smooth, developed calluses and small cuts. Her skin darkened from the sun despite her best efforts to stay covered. It was hard work, harder than anything she had ever done. But it was also satisfying in a way she had not expected. At the end of each day, she could see what she had accomplished. The animals fed, the garden weeded, the house kept clean. It was tangible in a way her life in town had never been, and through it all there was Thomas. He was there every day, always patient, always kind. He taught her to ride, steadying her when she wobbled in the saddle and laughing when she finally managed to trot without bouncing. He showed her how to mend a fence, his hands guiding hers as she hammered in a post. He sat with her on the porch in the evenings, both of them tired from the day's work, and talked about everything and nothing. Olivia found herself living for those evening conversations. Thomas was intelligent and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that surprised her. He asked her about her life before Arizona, and she told him about growing up in Philadelphia, the elegant parties and stifling social expectations. In turn, he told her about his childhood in Texas, his parents who had died young, the years of drifting before he found his way to Jonathan's ranch. "I was angry for a long time," he admitted one evening as they watched the sun set. "Angry at the world, at God, at myself. I did some things I am not proud of, got into fights, drank too much. That is why I had the reputation I told you about." "What changed, Jonathan?" "He did not try to fix me or preach at me. He just gave me work and treated me with respect. Somehow that made me want to be better, want to be the person he seemed to think I was. He was a good man. The best. I think about him every day. So do I. I wish I had known him better." Thomas turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "He would have been happy to know you were doing well, that the ranch was being cared for, that you were not letting your situation define you. I am trying. Some days are easier than others. That is all anyone can do." As her pregnancy progressed, Olivia found herself relying on Thomas more and more. He was unfailingly respectful, never mentioning her growing belly or the awkwardness of her situation. But he was also protective, insisting she avoid heavy work and making sure she had enough to eat. "You are eating for two now," he said one morning when she protested his insistence that she have a second helping of breakfast. "You need to keep your strength up. I am getting fat, not strong. You are growing a baby. There is a difference." She appreciated his matter-of-fact attitude. He did not treat her pregnancy as shameful or awkward, just as a fact of life. It was refreshing after months of whispers and judgment. One afternoon, in her 6th month, Olivia was hanging laundry when she felt a particularly strong kick from the baby. She gasped and pressed her hand to her stomach, feeling the movement beneath her palm. Thomas, who had been working nearby, was at her side immediately. "Are you all right? Is something wrong?" "No, nothing is wrong. The baby just kicked hard." "Is that normal?" "I think so. It has been happening more often lately." Without thinking, she took his hand and pressed it to her belly. "There, do you feel that?" Thomas's eyes went wide as the baby kicked again, the movement clear even through the fabric of her dress. "That is incredible. It is strange, more like. To think there is a whole person in there." They stood like that for a moment, Thomas's hand warm on her belly, both of them feeling the baby's movements. Then Olivia realized what she had done, how intimate the gesture was, and she stepped back quickly. "I am sorry. That was inappropriate." "No, it was." Thomas paused, his expression conflicted. "It was fine. More than fine. Thank you for sharing that with me." But the moment had shifted something between them. The awareness that had been building for weeks suddenly felt impossible to ignore. Olivia saw the way Thomas looked at her, the longing he tried to hide, and she knew he could see the same thing in her eyes. That night, lying alone in her bed, Olivia forced herself to face the truth. She was falling in love with Thomas Lawson. Maybe had already fallen. It was wrong, she told herself. Jonathan had been dead less than 3 months. She was pregnant with another man's child. She had no right to these feelings, but knowing it was wrong did not make the feelings go away. The situation came to a head one evening in late August. Olivia had been trying to carry water from the well when she stumbled, her balance thrown off by her pregnancy. The bucket went flying, and she would have fallen if Thomas had not caught her. "I told you to let me handle the heavy work," he said, his voice sharp with worry. "I am pregnant, not helpless. I know that. But there is a difference between being capable and being foolish. You could have hurt yourself, could have hurt the baby. I am fine. The baby is fine. You do not need to hover over me like I am made of glass. I am not hovering. I am trying to help." "Well, maybe I do not need your help." The words hung in the air between them. Olivia saw the hurt flash across Thomas's face before he carefully schooled his expression back to neutrality. "Fine," he said quietly. "I will leave you to it then." He walked away, his back stiff, and Olivia wanted to call after him but could not find the words. She was angry but not really at him. She was angry at herself, at the situation, at the way her heart kept pulling her toward a man she had no right to want. That night, she could not sleep. She tossed and turned, her back aching from the weight of the baby, her mind churning. Finally, she got up and went out onto the porch, hoping the cool night air would help. Thomas was there, sitting on the steps. "I thought you would be asleep," she said. "Could not sleep. Too much on my mind." Olivia sat down beside him, leaving a careful space between them. For a while they sat in silence, listening to the night sounds of the desert. An owl hooted in the distance. Crickets chirped in the grass. The horses moved restlessly in the corral. "I am sorry," Olivia said finally. "For snapping at you earlier. You were only trying to help. I know why you did it. You are trying to keep your distance from me." The directness of it took her breath away. "Thomas, let me finish, please." He turned to look at her, and in the moonlight his eyes were very blue. "I know this is complicated. I know you were just married, that you are grieving Jonathan, that you are carrying another man's child. I know all of that. But I also know that I am falling in love with you, Olivia. Maybe have been since the first moment I saw you in that church. And I hope that maybe you feel something for me too." Olivia's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "I do," she whispered. "God help me, I do, but it is wrong. Jonathan has been dead for barely 3 months, and I am pregnant, and you are his friend. This is all wrong." "Why is it wrong?" "Jonathan wanted me to look after you, wanted you to have a good life. Would he want us both to be miserable out of some sense of propriety? I do not know. But I do know that I cannot think about this right now. Cannot deal with these feelings on top of everything else. I need time, Thomas. Time to grieve, time to prepare for this baby, time to figure out who I am now that my whole life has changed." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand, and I will give you that time. But I am not going anywhere, Olivia. I will wait as long as you need." "What if I need forever?" "Then I will wait forever." The simple certainty in his voice made tears spring to her eyes. She reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Thank you for being patient, for being you." He squeezed back, then let go and stood. "I should let you rest. Good night, Olivia." "Good night, Thomas." She watched him walk to the bunkhouse, then sat alone on the porch for a long time, her hand resting on her belly where the baby slept. The next few months passed in a strange sort of limbo. Thomas kept his word, never pushing or pressuring, but the awareness between them remained. They were careful not to touch, maintaining a polite distance. But sometimes, Olivia would catch him watching her with such longing that it made her ache. And she knew he saw the same thing in her eyes when she looked at him, As her pregnancy advanced, preparing for the baby became her focus. Margaret visited several times, bringing baby clothes she had sewn and offering advice. Some of the women from town also came, their initial judgment softening into practical help. Mrs. Henderson, the doctor's wife, was particularly kind, teaching Olivia what to expect during labor and how to care for a newborn. "You will do fine," she said one afternoon as they folded tiny gowns. "Motherhood is mostly about learning as you go." "I am terrified," Olivia admitted. "That is natural, but you are strong and you have help. Thomas seems very dedicated to looking after you." There was a question in the statement, but Olivia did not take the bait. "He was Jonathan's friend." "He is honoring Jonathan's wishes by helping me, of course." Mrs. Henderson gave her a knowing smile. "Still, it is nice to have such a capable man around." In early December, Olivia woke in the middle of the night to pain. At first, she thought it was just the usual discomfort of late pregnancy, but as the pains continued and intensified, she realized what was happening. The baby was coming. She got up and managed to light a lamp with shaking hands. Then she made her way to the door. "Thomas." She called out into the darkness. "Thomas, I need you." He was there in moments, still pulling on his shirt. "What is wrong?" "The baby. It is coming." To his credit, Thomas did not panic. "All right, let me get you back to bed, then I will ride for the doctor." "There is not time. The pains are already closed together." "Then I will get Mrs. Henderson. She can help." "Thomas," Olivia gasped as another pain hit. "Do not leave me." She saw the conflict on his face, the warring between getting help and staying with her. Finally, he made a decision. "All right, I am staying. But we are going to need help. Is there anyone closer than town?" "The Sanchez family, about a mile south." "Mrs. Sanchez has had 6 children, right? I will be back as fast as I can. You lie down and try to stay calm. Can you do that?" Olivia nodded, though calm seemed impossible. Thomas helped her to the bed, then ran out. She heard the sound of a horse galloping away into the night. The contractions continued, each one stronger than the last. Olivia tried to remember what Mrs. Henderson had told her about breathing and staying relaxed, but it was hard to think through the pain. She had never felt anything like this all-consuming force that seemed to take over her entire body. Thomas returned with Mrs. Sanchez, a plump, cheerful woman who immediately took charge. She sent Thomas to boil water and gather clean cloths, then examined Olivia with practiced efficiency. "The baby is coming fast," she said in accented English. "You are doing good, Mrs. Burke. Just keep breathing." The next few hours were a blur of pain and effort. Mrs. Sanchez coached her through each contraction, her voice calm and encouraging. At some point, Dr. Henderson arrived, having been fetched by Mr. Sanchez, and he confirmed that everything was progressing normally. Thomas stayed close, despite the impropriety of a man being present at a birth. He held Olivia's hand when she needed something to grip, wiped her forehead with a cool cloth, and murmured encouragement. His presence was the one thing that kept her grounded when the pain threatened to overwhelm her. Finally, as dawn was breaking, the baby came. Olivia heard the cry, thin and outraged, and felt a rush of relief so intense it made her dizzy. "A boy," Mrs. Sanchez said, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket. "A healthy boy." She placed the baby in Olivia's arms, and Olivia looked down at the tiny red face, the small fists waving in the air. Her son. He was perfect. "He is beautiful," Thomas said softly from beside the bed, and he was. Despite everything, despite the circumstances of his conception, despite the fear and shame Olivia had carried for months, her son was beautiful and perfect, and hers, Dr. Henderson finished his examination of both mother and baby, pronouncing them both healthy. "You did well, Mrs. Burke. Rest now. You have earned it." Mrs. Sanchez stayed to help Olivia get cleaned up and settled, showing her how to nurse the baby. It was awkward at first, but the baby seemed to know what to do, latching on with a determination that made Olivia smile despite her exhaustion. When everyone finally left and she was alone with the baby, Olivia lay in bed and marveled at what had just happened. She was a mother. This tiny person was depending on her completely. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. There was a soft knock at the door. "Can I come in?" Thomas asked. "Yes." He entered carrying a cup of tea. "Mrs. Sanchez made this for you before she left, said it would help with your strength." Olivia took the tea gratefully. The baby had fallen asleep at her breast, his small face peaceful. "Thank you for everything you did last night. I did not do much. You stayed. That was everything." Thomas moved closer, looking down at the baby. "What will you name him?" Olivia had been thinking about this for weeks. Jonathan, after his father. She saw something flicker in Thomas's eyes. "That is a good name, an honorable name. He was an honorable man, it seems fitting." "Yes." Thomas reached out as if to touch the baby, then pulled his hand back. "I should let you rest." "Thomas, wait." Olivia shifted the baby carefully. "Would you like to hold him?" "I do not want to intrude." "You are not intruding, please." Carefully, awkwardly, Thomas took the baby. He cradled little Jonathan with surprising gentleness, his large hands somehow perfectly suited to holding such a small person. The baby stirred but did not wake. "He is so small," Thomas said wonderingly. "I know. It is hard to believe he will grow into a person." They stayed like that for a few moments, Thomas holding the baby, Olivia watching them both. It felt right in a way that made her heart ache. This was what a family should look like, she thought. Not her rushed marriage to a dying man or her brief encounter with a soldier who never looked back. This. A man who stayed, who cared, who loved. "Thomas," she said softly. He looked up from the baby to her face. "I am glad you are here. So am I." The next few weeks were exhausting and wonderful. Little Jonathan was a good baby, but he still needed constant care. Olivia was grateful for Thomas's help. He took over all the heavy work around the ranch and even helped with the baby when Olivia needed a break. He was surprisingly good with the infant, able to calm him when he was fussy and patient during the long nights when Jonathan would not settle. Christmas came and went quietly. Margaret visited, bringing gifts and cooing over her nephew. She and Olivia sat together while the baby slept, talking like they used to before everything changed. "You seem happy here," Margaret said. "Different than you were in town." "I am different. This place, this life, it has changed me." "And Thomas, how do you feel about him?" Olivia looked out the window to where Thomas was chopping wood. Even in the winter cold, he worked in just his shirt, his breath making clouds in the air. "I am in love with him." "Have you told him?" "Not in so many words, but I think he knows." "What are you waiting for?" "I do not know. Fear, I suppose. Fear that it is too soon, that people will judge, that I will somehow dishonor Jonathan's memory." Margaret took her hand. "Jonathan married you so you could have a good life." "Do you think a good life means being alone and miserable out of some misplaced sense of loyalty to a man you knew for 3 days? When you put it like that, it sounds foolish." "It is not foolish to have feelings, but it might be foolish to waste them. Life is short, live." "You have learned that better than anyone. If you love Thomas and he loves you, why wait?" That night, after Margaret had gone, Olivia sat on the porch with the baby sleeping in her arms. It was cold, but she had wrapped them both in a thick quilt. The stars were brilliant overhead, undimmed by any town lights. Thomas came out and sat beside her. "You will catch your death out here." I needed some air, some time to think. "What are you thinking about?" Olivia took a deep breath. "About something I need to tell you. A confession I should have made a long time ago. You do not have to tell me anything." "I want to." She turned to look at him, her heart pounding. "Thomas, I have never been kissed." He looked confused. "What? I know it sounds impossible. I have a baby, but it is true." The soldier who fathered Jonathan, it was not. We did not kiss. It was dark and fast and over almost before it began. And my marriage to Jonathan, well, that was hardly a marriage at all. So I have lived 24 years and given birth to a child, and I have never been kissed. Not really. Thomas was staring at her, his expression unreadable. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to be kissed, I mean, by you, if you still want to." For a moment he did not move. Then he reached out and gently took the sleeping baby from her arms, placing him carefully in the basket she had brought out. When his hands were free, he turned back to Olivia and cupped her face in his palms. "I have wanted to kiss you since the first moment I saw you," he said softly. "But I need to know this is real, that you are sure." "I am sure. I love you, Thomas. I have loved you for months. I want to be with you if you will have me." "If I will have you," he laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Olivia, I have been yours since that day in the church. I am just grateful you finally feel the same." And then he kissed her. It was gentle at first, a soft press of lips that made her whole body tingle. Then it deepened, became something more passionate, and Olivia felt like she was finally, truly being seen. This was what a kiss should be. This tenderness, this connection, this overwhelming sense of rightness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "I love you. I will love you for the rest of my life." "Then marry me, make this official." "You are already married." "I am a widow, and I want to be your wife, really your wife." "People will talk." "Let them. I do not care anymore. I want to build a life with you, Thomas. I want Jonathan to grow up with a father who loves him. I want to wake up beside you every morning and fall asleep in your arms every night." If that is scandalous, so be it. Thomas kissed her again, and she felt all the loneliness and fear of the past year finally fall away. This was home. Not the ranch, not Casa Grande, but here in his arms. They were married in February, a quiet ceremony with just Margaret and a few friends as witnesses. Her father did not attend, but Olivia found she did not care. She had spent too long trying to earn his approval. It was time to live for herself and the family she was creating. The marriage caused some gossip, as she had known it would. A widow remarrying so soon to her dead husband's employee while raising another man's child. But Thomas faced down the whispers with quiet dignity, and eventually, people moved on to other scandals. Life on the ranch settled into a comfortable rhythm. Thomas was a devoted husband and a wonderful father to Jonathan, treating the boy as if he were his own blood. Olivia had never been happier. The work was still hard, but it was satisfying. And at the end of each day, she had Thomas to come home to. Their first year of marriage was full of small joys and challenges. They expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and building a new barn. Jonathan took his first steps, then learned to say "Papa" while looking at Thomas, which made them both cry. Olivia discovered she had a talent for raising chickens, and they began selling eggs in town, and Thomas made good on his promise to make up for every lost year. He courted her the way she deserved to be courted, with flowers picked from the desert and poetry read by lamplight. He kissed her often, teaching her all the ways lips could meet and spark joy. He held her when she cried over small things and laughed with her when life was funny. He was everything she had never dared to dream of. In the spring of their second year together, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news brought only joy. Thomas was ecstatic, and even little Jonathan seemed to sense something special was happening, patting her growing belly with his chubby hands. Their daughter was born on a warm day in October, with Mrs. Sanchez once again attending. Thomas was there throughout, holding Olivia's hand and whispering encouragement. When the baby girl emerged with a lusty cry, he wept openly. "She is perfect," he said, cradling his daughter, "just like her mother." They named her Rose after Thomas's mother. She had Thomas's blue eyes and Olivia's dark hair, and from the beginning, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. Watching Thomas with both children, Olivia sometimes had to pinch herself to believe this was real, that this was her life. She had gone from scared and alone to surrounded by love. It felt like a miracle. More years passed, each one bringing its own blessings. Another son, Samuel, was born 2 years after Rose. Then twin girls, Emma and Grace, who arrived early and kept them all on their toes. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the territory. They added a second story to the house to accommodate their growing family and hired help to manage the expanding operation. But the true wealth was not in the land or the cattle. It was in the love that filled their home. In Thomas, reading bedtime stories to a crowd of sleepy children. In Olivia, teaching Rose to braid her hair. In Jonathan, now a lanky teenager, working alongside his father with pride. In the laughter and occasional tears that marked the passage of their days. On their 10th anniversary, Thomas took Olivia on a picnic to the spot where they had first kissed. The children were left in the care of Rosa, who had come to work for them years before and had become like family. They sat on a blanket, eating simple food and watching the sun set over the land they had built together. "Have you been happy?" Thomas asked. "Truly happy." Olivia leaned against his shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought possible. You have given me everything, Thomas. A home, a family, a life worth living. You gave me the same. Before you, I was just drifting, going through the motions. You gave me purpose, gave me something to build for. We built it together." "Yes." He kissed the top of her head. "We did." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Olivia thought about the girl she had been 10 years ago. Scared and pregnant and standing in a church wearing a borrowed dress. That girl could never have imagined this. Could never have believed that her story would end not in shame and ruin, but in love and joy. "You ever regret it?" Thomas asked quietly. "The circumstances that brought us together, the pain you went through?" Olivia considered the question seriously. "I regret causing Jonathan pain. I regret the soldier who took advantage of me. I regret my father's cruelty, but I do not regret where I ended up. How could I, when it led me to you? I think about Jonathan sometimes. Wonder what he would think of all this. I think he would be happy. He wanted us both to have good lives. Wanted us not to be alone. I like to believe he knew somehow that we would find each other. Maybe he did. Maybe that is why he asked me to look after you." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen. After a while, Thomas pulled a small package from his pocket. "I got you something." Inside was a delicate silver locket. Olivia opened it to find 2 photographs, one of Jonathan Burke, young and healthy from before the consumption took him. The other was of their family, all of them together. "I thought you should have both," Thomas said. "The past and the present, they are both part of who you are." Olivia felt tears well up. "It is perfect, thank you." He helped her fasten it around her neck, then kissed her, slow and sweet. Even after 10 years and 5 children, his kisses still made her heart race. "I love you," she whispered against his lips. "I love you too, always have, always will." They rode home in the moonlight, and Olivia thought about all the kisses they had shared over the years. Passionate kisses and tender ones. Quick kisses in passing and long, lingering ones. Each one was precious. Each one a gift she never took for granted. When they arrived home, the house was warm and full of noise. The children had waited up despite Rosa's best efforts, and they tumbled out to greet their parents with hugs and questions about their evening. Thomas scooped up the twins, one in each arm, while Jonathan took the horses to the barn. Rose and Samuel clung to Olivia's skirts, talking over each other about their day. Standing in the doorway, surrounded by the chaos and love of her family, Olivia sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. For Jonathan Burke, who had given her a chance when she needed it most. For Thomas Lawson, who had taught her what love really meant. For her children, each one a blessing. For this life she had built from the ashes of her mistakes. She thought about that long-ago confession, the words that had changed everything. I have never been kissed. It had been true then, but it was not true anymore. She had been kissed thousands of times since that first night on the porch. And Thomas had made up for every lost year, giving her more love and happiness than she had ever thought possible. The years continued to pass, as years do. The children grew, each finding their own path. Jonathan became a lawyer, using his intelligence to help people navigate the increasingly complex laws of what was now the state of Arizona. Rose married a teacher and moved to Phoenix, but visited often with her own growing family. Samuel took over the ranch, showing the same dedication and care his father had taught him. The twins, inseparable as always, opened a shop in Casa Grande selling the beautiful quilts they made together. Thomas and Olivia grew old together, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming gnarled with age and work. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by time and shared experiences. On their 40th anniversary, they sat once again on the porch of the ranch house. The land had changed around them. Casa Grande had grown from a rough territorial town into a proper city. The ranch had expanded until it covered over 1,000 acres, but some things remained the same. The cottonwood trees still shaded the house. The creek still ran year-round, and Thomas still looked at Olivia like she hung the moon. 40 years, Olivia said wonderingly. It seems impossible. Best 40 years of my life. Mine too. Their children and grandchildren had thrown them a party the day before, a huge gathering with food and music and laughter. But today was just for them, a quiet day to reflect and remember. You remember the first time I kissed you? Thomas asked. Of course. I will never forget it. You were so gentle, so patient. I was terrified, afraid you would realize you could do better. Olivia laughed. Better than a good man who loved me. There is no such thing. I made you a promise that night. Do you remember? You made a lot of promises. I told you I would love you for the rest of my life. I want you to know I kept that promise. I have loved you every single day. I know. And I have loved you just as much. He took her hand, his grip still strong despite the years. I would do it all again, you know. Every moment. Every challenge. Every joy. All of it just to end up here with you. Olivia squeezed his hand, feeling the wedding band he had never removed. Beside it, she wore 2 rings. The simple gold band from her marriage to Jonathan and the more elaborate one Thomas had given her. She had never taken either off, honoring both the man who had given her a chance and the man who had given her a life. They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red and purple. Around them, the ranch hummed with life, cattle lowing in the distance, horses whinnying in the corral, the voices of Samuel's children playing in the yard. We did all right, did we not? Olivia said. Better than all right. We built something real, something that will last, because of you, because of us. As darkness fell, they went inside to the home they had shared for over 4 decades. The house had been added onto several times, but the heart of it was still the small adobe structure Jonathan Burke had built. Olivia liked that. Liked the sense of continuity, of honoring the past while building the future. That night, lying in bed with Thomas's arms around her, Olivia thought about the long, winding road that had brought her here. The fear and shame, the unexpected kindness, the slow blooming of love. The years of joy and challenge and growth. "No regrets," she whispered into the darkness. "No regrets," Thomas agreed. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, two souls who had found each other against all odds and built a love that lasted. When Olivia passed away at the age of 72, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Thomas held her hand until the very end. She went peacefully, a small smile on her face. Thomas followed her 6 months later, his heart simply giving out. Samuel found him in the barn, sitting on a bale of hay, looking toward the house as if he could still see Olivia waiting for him on the porch. They were buried side by side in the small cemetery outside Casa Grande, their graves marked with a simple headstone that read, "Thomas and Olivia Lawson." Beloved parents and grandparents, together in life, together in eternity. Not far away was another grave, much older, its stone weathered by decades of Arizona sun and wind. Jonathan Burke, a good man who gave generously in life and in death. Thomas had placed it there himself, years ago, wanting to honor the friend who had brought them together. The ranch continued, passed down through generations of the family. And though times changed and the world moved on, the story of Thomas and Olivia became part of family legend. The story of a woman who had nothing and a man who gave her everything. Of a love that overcame shame and scandal and grief to build something beautiful and lasting. And on quiet evenings, when the family gathered on the porch of the old ranch house, they would tell the story to the youngest generation. About the bride who confessed she had never been kissed. About the cowboy who made up for every lost year. About the kind of love that comes once in a lifetime, if you are very lucky. The kind of love that endures.